Today's Hootie and JJ show is being brought to you by the following sponsors. The Aberdeen Barn, Virginia's finest steakhouse, located at 2018 Holiday Drive. The barn has been a Charlottesville tradition for more than 60 years. And by the Good Feet store. Visit the store at Stonefield, right across from the movie theater, for a free fitting of arch supports to relieve stress on your feet, knees, and back, and to allow you to walk and stand without pain. Also, stores conveniently located in Richmond, Northern Virginia, and beyond. Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's Hootie and JJ show. Minus JJ, Coach Jeff Jones had a prior engagement. Couldn't make it today's show, but he'll be back next week when we'll talk about the Virginia naming the court for Tony Bennett. That will be coming up a week from Saturday when Miami comes to town, and that's a celebration of Tony Bennett's career. And JJ will be back on next week. We'll have a special guest to talk about Tony Bennett and his impact on Virginia basketball. But today we have another special guest, someone I've known for a long, long time and have the ultimate respect for, not just as what he does for a living, but just what a good guy he is. And we appreciate him taking some time out of his schedule. He stays on the move, man. He's all over the place. I'm talking about Dan Bonner. Uh, Mostly of, well, just about every TV network you can imagine he's worked for. Dan, thanks for taking time to be with us today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the nice things you've said. We have known each other a long time, and it's been a very good relationship. So I'm happy to join.
Well, it was kind of a culmination last April down in the Tidewater area when you were named to the 2025 State of Virginia Sports Hall of Fame class. And I was on hand to watch you and a couple other friends go to that class and into the Hall of Fame. And uh, that was really a thrill for me to see you finally get honored for that, and very much deserving. I know you're a very we had a very self-deprecating acceptance speech. I know you're a modest guy, but congratulations again on that honor. It's very special.
It is. But as I have told people that I don't know that the term well-deserved applies to me personally. It applies, I think, if you include all the people I've worked with and all the people who have helped me, then collectively it's deserved. But I was very honored and very humbled. There's a lot of great names, including yourself, in that Hall of Fame. And as an interesting sidebar there, my daughter-in-law, who she and my son went down with Terry and I to the Hall of Fame. And as soon as she saw the list of inductees for this year's Hall of Fame class, she called me up to say, why couldn't you be inducted this year? There would be better people to see. So, but that's what happens when you have daughters-in-law.
Exactly. I know what you mean. Uh, yeah, it was a fun weekend, that's for sure. Uh, a lot of people who've seen you on TV all these years may not know that you were a UVA player and a coach at one time. Dan hails from Pittsburgh. I guess he was part of that Pennsylvania migration from that with Coach Bill Hooter Gibson. I mean, golly, Barry Parkhill, Jim Hopgood, Gus Gerard. Who else from
Frank
Pennsylvania?
DeWitt, Frank DeWitt, who
Frank
was
DeWitt.
Frank
Yeah.
DeWitt. We had now Barry was from central Pennsylvania, but the rest you mentioned, Jim Hopgood and myself and Gus Gerard and Frank DeWitt, we were all Western PA guys. And so it was fun. That's one of the reasons why I went to Virginia, is because I didn't know those guys before I met them at Virginia, but I knew who they were. And I had followed them through their high school careers because sports in Pittsburgh is a big deal. And at least at our time, high school basketball was a big deal. And so everybody followed it, and those of us who played followed it at least as intently as everybody else. So I was thrilled to meet all those guys and get to know those guys.
Yeah, and you guys were kind of the front runners, I guess, of starting to build Virginia basketball into what it became. I mean, you had some pretty darn good players on those rosters, and you started to turn the program around, right?
Well, I think that the credit for that goes, and people ask me this all the time. They say to me, well, who was the best player in the history of Virginia basketball? And I think that objectively, that answer is Ralph Sampson with all his accolades. But if you're going to ask me who the most important player in the history of Virginia basketball was, my answer to you would be Barry Parkhill, because Barry was really the one who was there and was the star and was the motivating factor of the team that first got it going. I was privileged to be on the team as a sophomore because we had freshman teams back in those days.
Right.
When Barry was a senior, I was a sophomore, and we weren't nearly as good as they were the 2 years before that. So Barry got it going as a sophomore and junior, and then he was burdened with people like me when he was a senior, and the thing fell off a little bit. And it got rolling again when Terry Holland showed up. And I was there. My senior year was Terry's first year, and of course his second year is when they won the ACC Tournament championship for the first time. And I told him after the season that I felt like I had something to do with that and building that up. And he told me I did. He told me that as soon as he got rid of the deadwood, they were able to have some success. So that sort of sums up my role in the building of the Virginia basketball program.
A lot of people didn't realize you were captain of the 74, 75 team, right?
Yeah, and Andrew Beninti and I were the co-captains, and I think that was probably because we didn't have anybody else. It was a very interesting time, and it was a fun time, and I really enjoyed it. Although we didn't have the success during my 3 years being on the team at Virginia as they have had subsequently. But we were there at the start, and Barry was at the start. So that's of course I'm a little biased there because Barry was a teammate and has become a very good friend.
Yeah, they don't come much better than Barry Parkhill, that's for sure. I know after your playing days, you dabbled into coaching a little bit with I don't know if you meant to or not, but you ended up being the head coach of the women's program for 2 years.
Well, I didn't aspire to that. And,
Yeah.
Right now, that sounds like a really impressive thing. But at the time, it wasn't. I had always planned to go to law school, and I got the coaching bug. I didn't want to be away from basketball. And so they had a graduate assistantship. And I went and asked Coach Holland about that, but he had already offered it to someone else. And Mr. Corrigan said, "Well, I have another graduate assistantship." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you can have the graduate assistantship with the women." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "So, okay, who's the head coach?" And he said, "Well, you are." And I said, "What?" And so now I'm a 22-year-old kid. Keep this in mind. I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from college, and I'm the head coach of the Virginia women's basketball team, but I'm a graduate assistant. And the only reason that I was the head coach, and, is because I was a guy that Mr. Corrigan had the perfect coach there and on site. And actually, she became my assistant. And because it was the women's team, we had to split the graduate assistantship. It was $2,500. And so I got $1,500 because I was the head coach, and she got $1,000 because she was the assistant coach. And we had to be in graduate school. In graduate school, the tuition was $1,600. Since we were both from Pennsylvania, they wouldn't approve us for in-state tuition. So I was paid $1,500 and had to pay them $1,600. And my assistant was paid $1,000 and had to pay him $1,600. And I did that for 2 years, had a wonderful time. And then Mr. Corrigan got worried that I was too interested in it. And so he advised me to move on. And then he made a great choice because my assistant was Debbie Ryan. And so you're talking about somebody who built a program. Debbie,
Yeah.
she's in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. She was a wonderful coach. She's a wonderful person. And, she's very kind. She gives me credit for helping her, and that's not true. She helped me much more, but we were a couple of kids. We were both 22 years old. Neither one of us had any idea what we were doing. My greatest success was that's where I met my wife. So I consider myself an extremely successful head coach of the women's team because I've been married to Terry for 47 years now. And so that was a very interesting experience, very different. I think the people who are involved with women's basketball now have no idea what it was like back then. And, I'm glad it's the way it is now, but the people who are playing now, they've got some shoulders they're standing on.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine having to start that program from pretty much scratch. And um, wow, that must have been an incredible challenge just to get things going from week to week in the ACC like that.
But we didn't even have an ACC. There wasn't an
Oh, that's
ACC
right.
for
They
women.
didn't have enough teams, right?
Well, there
Women's
were
teams.
very few teams in the ACC that had women's programs.
Right.
But our schedule, we played Bridgewater, we played Roanoke, we played Sweetbriar, we played Mary Baldwin, and now there were a couple of teams that had programs. North Carolina State did. Kay Yao was the coach at North Carolina State, and Clemson had a pretty good program, and Maryland had a really good program. The dominant women's program back in those days in the state was Old Dominion. Jim
Yeah.
Jarrett, who was the AD at Old Dominion, figured out, well, wait a minute, I got an empty gym here. If I just invest some money in this, maybe I can get people to show up and buy tickets. And so Old Dominion became a national power, and they sort of helped pave the way for the future of programs, at least in the state of Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember some of those ODU teams with Nancy Lieberman, and she came later, but still, you're right. They were a national powerhouse. No question about it. How did you get into broadcasting? I'm sure that's something that wasn't on your radar either, but
Well, it wasn't, but Mr. Corrigan suggested I moved on to a new chapter in my life after 2 years of being in graduate school and working with the women's program. And I didn't have anything to do. I was still trying to convince Terry that I was the right one. And so I was hanging around in Charlottesville. And Barry, we were talking about Barry Parkhill. Barry was the radio analyst for the Virginia Radio Network, doing what Jimmy Miller does now. And Barry's brother, Bruce, became the head coach at William and Mary. And Barry went with Bruce as an assistant at William and Mary. And so the job as analyst on the Virginia Radio Network was open. And I went to Mr. Corrigan and I asked him if I could do it. And Mr. Corrigan told me no. And I said, well, why not? And he said, you don't have any experience. And I said, well, Barry didn't have any experience before he did it. And he said, no. He said, we really need this to be good. And so at the time, Len Hathaway, I think his name was, the guy who did the Redskins back in the day. He had done Virginia basketball for a couple of years, and he was moving on. And so Mr. Corrigan needed a play-by-play person and an analyst. And he told me that if he could find an experienced play-by-play person, then he would hire me. But if he couldn't find an experienced play-by-play person, then he would hire an experienced analyst. So it turned out that he couldn't find anybody who was experienced in either thing. And so I got the job as the analyst. Doug Logan, who did it for many years, was the play-by-play guy. And, one of the reasons Mr. Corrigan may have had a hard time finding it was that the job paid $5 a game.
are you serious?
I'm 100% serious.
Wow.
So,
$5.
but Doug and I did so well that first year that I got a raise the next year, and it was a raise. I've never had a raise like that. I got 100% raise. The next year I got $10 again. So I got in. That's how I got into it, into broadcasting. And Mr. Corrigan, at the time, if you recall, in the ACC, and it's hard to remember back to these days when there's 37 teams in the ACC, but in those days there were 7 teams.
Right.
There were the 4 North Carolina schools: Maryland, Virginia, and Clemson. And the folks from Maryland, Virginia, and Clemson were paranoid about C.D. Chesley and his ACC Game of the Week because they said it was totally bias toward the state of North Carolina and those programs because there was nobody involved in the broadcast who was from a state other than North Carolina, and they were right. Now, of course, there was no bias. The people who were doing it they were basketball fans and great announcers. And so, but the three athletic directors from the three non-North Carolina schools were constantly on Mr. Chesley's case, put somebody in who was not from the state of North Carolina. And Mr. Chesley always told him, well, you find somebody who can do it and I'll put him in. And so Mr. Corrigan recommended me and Mr. Chesley hired me. And I did a few games for him in the 1981 season, which is the first year that I did that. The first thing I ever did for him, I did a game in the old Big Four tournament. In fact, I believe it was the last Big Four tournament that they had. So I did that for him in 1980, but that was the 80-81 season. And then that was after that season, Mr. Chesley lost the rights to the ACC because there was a bidding war going on between NBC and CBS for the rights to various conferences. And so another outfit came in and took over the ACC, and I was not part of that package, but Rick Ray, who was starting Raycom, had seen my work, and he hired me to work games in the old Metro Conference for Raycom for the 1982 season. And that was the old, Virginia Tech and Louisville and Memphis State at the time and Tulane. It was a great league, great games. And then in 1983, Raycom and Jefferson Pilot partnered up and got the rights to the ACC. And since I had a connection with Raycom, then I got involved with the ACC. And I've been involved ever since. So it was, I was looking for a job and Mr. Corrigan didn't want to hire me. And when he did hire us, he brought Doug and I into his office that first time with Coach Holland was there and the various sponsors from the radio network and the people who were running the radio station. And his words, I won't quote him exactly, but he said, okay, you two, the job's yours. Don't screw it up. And so that was how I got started. And I've just been very fortunate that I have stayed involved for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing it well. So you were sailing with a pilot all along there. Dan has worked for CBS Sports, ESPN, Raycom, Jefferson Pilot, Fox Sports, ACC Network. Don't leave anybody. Yeah.
He probably did, but I don't know.
You've been I've enjoyed listening to you and your analysis all these years, and I'm sure the fans have too. Um, it's been special, hasn't it? I mean, doing ACC games all these years, I know it's not the same as it used to be when it was a more close-knit conference. It was more like a family back then. It's more like a corporate thing now, a corporate entity with so many teams spread over half the country. But it's looking back on it, I know just thinking about the memories of covering games in different places and getting to know personalities from all these schools over the years. I guess looking back on it, it's been a special ride, hasn't it?
It's been unbelievable, and it's something that I make my living supposedly expressing myself, and it's very hard for me to express the way I feel about that. I enjoyed the games. I enjoyed the fact that I worked through what I thought was the golden age of ACC basketball. I was able to work with so many different people who helped me, who moved me along. I think about in the early days, working with people like Jim Thacker. Was able to work with Bob Rathbun, worked for years with Mike Patrick, worked with Marty Brenneman, and that helped propel me to other things. It was Billy Packer who first told the people from CBS that they should hire me to work the NCAA tournament back in 1991 when CBS went from just starting out on the weekend. Of course, as you well know, the games are Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday in the first and second round of the NCAA tournament. CBS didn't do the Thursday and Friday games, but starting with the 1991 tournament, they did. And they decided that they were going to use only 8 announcing teams and they needed people. And Billy suggested they hire me. And so thanks to Billy's influence, I got on with CBS, and somehow I'm still on with them. I've had a very good relationship with them, met some wonderful people. I tell everybody all the time that I have worked for the last 19 years with Kevin Harlan,
Yeah.
and I've worked 18 NCAA tournaments with Kevin Harlan. And I just think Kevin Harlan is one of the best announcers ever, and he has become a very, very close friend. And the games are fun, the tournaments are fun, but it's the people that really make it. And knowing guys like Bob Rathbun, knowing guys like Mike Patrick, knowing guys like Kevin Harlan, and I could go on and, you have to turn me off, but I don't want to offend anybody. But the whole thing is the people. And it's not just the people who I sat next to, but it's the people behind the camera. And it just has been a wonderful experience. And, somebody asked me last night, in all the years I've been doing it, what's my favorite experience? And I can't, the one that I like the best? And I can't really answer that question because there are so many, but they involve people. Much more than games, they involve people.
Yeah, I've always felt like you and Kevin Harlan are just a great team. I mean, you guys have such good chemistry together. Um, I love that guy's voice. I mean, he has a perfect play-by-play voice. Um, but you guys, uh, I think, are as good a team as there are out there.
But
Uh,
Jerry, that's kind of you to say, but I will tell you that if a person who does what I do, an analyst for basketball games, can't sound good when he's working with Kevin Harlan, then there's something wrong with it. Kevin is just fabulous, and
yeah.
I have told people for many years, and I've told Kevin this, that I think I do my best work when I'm working with him, and so that has been really wonderful for me too. But again, it's the people you meet, it's the relationships you build, and that's what has been fun, and that's what sort of keeps me going and through all this.
What's the key to having a good chemistry, a good teamwork with a play-by-play guy? You've worked with so many different guys, and I know you and Kevin have a special bond, but what's the key to the success behind that? Because I would think sometimes it might just not click, but uh, you got to know when to talk, when to stop talking, so you don't talk over the play-by-play guy, and it's tough coming up with a really intelligent comment every time that you're supposed to make a contribution to the broadcast because it's just constantly flowing.
Well, it is. And of course, I haven't made intelligent comments all the time, and I have made many faux pas. But the key is, I think the key to a good team is the ability to build relationships among the people on the team, between the coaches and the players. And I think that's the key to a good announced team as well. It's relationship building. And it's hard sometimes if you're working with a different person every night. They can be really good people, but it's hard to build the chemistry that you need. So it's a great advantage when you're able to work with people over and over again. And I've been very fortunate that in my career, coming up with Raycom and Jefferson Pilot, as I said, I was able to work many, many games with Marty Brennaman, many games with Mike Patrick, many, many games with Bob Rathman, with Tim Brandt. And the names I'm mentioning are all wonderful people.
Yeah.
And so if you're working with wonderful people, then if there's a problem with chemistry, then it's your fault, not theirs. And I have always tried to hopefully be a good teammate. But again, it's just hitting it off. Bob and I are good friends. Kevin and I are good friends. Mike Patrick and I were good friends. So that's what it is. The key to any successful venture that you're working with people is building positive relationships, and I've been very fortunate to be able to do that.
And a couple of the other guys you've had been broadcast partners with, Tim Brando, who's a really good guy. Gus
He's
Johnson.
and he's a special kind of guy. Wes Durham is somebody that he worked for many years doing radio with Vanderbilt and Radford and Georgia Tech.
Right.
And then he got on to the TV side of things, and he and I worked together at Raycom and Jefferson Pilot, and we've been able to work together at the ACC network. So it's when you work with good people, it's much easier.
And one of the greats of all time, Vern Lundquist. You
Or again, you can mention names, and I've worked with about all of them. And so I wouldn't want to leave Vern out. But Vern, I had the opportunity to work with him a few times, and boy, that was a big thrill for me.
he's one of the best of all time.
Yes, he is, without any question. He's
Yeah,
one of those voices that when you hear his voice, you know it's something big going on.
exactly. Exactly. Um, it's pretty cool that you've been involved in the NCAA tournament for all these years. I know you said you had your, I guess, your first venture in was it 81?
Well,
Uh,
actually, my first venture was in '86
86, that's right. I was looking at the
because,
wrong
again,
one.
CBS got the rights to the tournament for the '82 tournament. But from '82 through '91, they didn't do the first round games. And so an outfit called NCAA Productions did.
Right.
And I got involved with NCAA Productions for the 1986 tournament. And so I worked in '86, '87, '88, '89, and '90 for NCAA Productions. So that means because we had COVID and we missed an NCAA tournament, that means this year's NCAA tournament will be my 40th. And so that's,
Congratulations.
well, congratulations go to the people that I've worked with and the people who are dumb enough to keep hiring me. So,
Uh, you've seen some hellacious games during that time period. Do you have any favorites that stand out in your mind?
well, over the time, and people laugh at me when I tell them this, but I worked, can't remember whether it's 14 or 15 Division II national championship tournaments. And in Division II, they don't have a Final Four, they have an Elite Eight. And you go to a site and they play on Wednesday and Thursday, the quarterfinals and the semifinals. They take Friday off, and then they play the championship game on Saturday. And the most memorable thing I've had in a tournament that was a championship game was in the 2007 NCAA Division II National Championship game. It was the only time in my life I've ever worked with Iron Eagle, and that was a special treat too. But we did the championship game between Winona State from Minnesota and Barton College from Wilson, North Carolina.
Wow.
Barton was this tiny little school, and Winona State was the two-time defending champion. And Barton came in, and in the quarterfinal, they had to rally from way down and win the game on a shot at the buzzer. And in the semifinals, they had to rally from way down and win the game on a shot at the buzzer. And then in the championship game, they were down by 9 points with 45 seconds left in the game. They scored the last 10 points of the game and won on a shot at the buzzer. And so that run through that tournament, and I was able to be involved in all of those games, that run through that tournament really sticks in my mind as something that stands out. I did a lot of things. I had the game that a lot of people still talk about with was between Kansas and Northern Iowa, maybe in 2010, where the kid Ali Farokhmanesh took a ridiculous three-point shot that nobody in the world would have taken except him, and he made it, and they eliminated Kansas, who was the top seed in the tournament, the overall #1 seed. So that was a fun moment, and the one of the more recent things that everybody talks about because they had some silly camera that's sitting there spying on the announcers when a kid from Furman who had missed his last 16 three-point shots made a three-point shot at the buzzer to beat Virginia in the first round of the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, and they caught the reaction of Kevin and Stan Van Gundy and I on that little camera. They always ask me about that. So that's a moment that stands out as well.
Yeah, that was a disappointing day for Virginia fans for sure. Yeah, you've seen some incredible games over that stretch of time, no question about it. Moving ahead to as recent as last night, a lot of people may not have caught it, but Dan was in Clemson last night for the Virginia Tech's upset over number 20 Clemson. The thing that caught me not only about just the game, but was listening to Boeheim talk about how he had to be there for a 7 a.m. shoot around Wednesday morning. Were you part
It
of
was,
that?
yeah, of course. At Clemson, they shoot around at 7 or 8 a.m. on game days. And I know this is a stunning kind of reasoning, but so their guys can go to class, and so that's why they do it. And, but it was funny the way my two partners, complained about that. They complained about it on the air. But, that's, there's more involved in what we do than just sitting down 5 minutes before the game and starting to go.
Yeah.
And I'm not complaining, and it's, everybody's job involves more than other people think. But, you go to practices, you go to shoot arounds, you talk to coaches, you talk to players, you spend hours watching tape, you read everything you can get, you try to keep yourself informed. But it's also, you like to go and you like to have a good time. And Jim is a night owl. He doesn't like to get up early. And the funny thing about him, and people may not know this, it's like standard practice now to have a shoot around. Now, 50 years ago, when I was involved, if you'd have said you're going to have a shoot around, the players would have had a revolt. But now, it's standard practice. But Jim Boeheim never had shoot arounds.
Really? I didn't
No,
know
he
that.
never did. Never did. So he never did a shoot around. And so he is he's a little flummoxed whether it's at 7 a.m. or at 4 p.m. because he never did shoot arounds. And he likes to go to the gym one time to do a game. And that's been fun working with Jim. A little intimidating because he has more basketball knowledge in his little finger than I have in my entire body. And here I am, I'm supposed to be analyzing the game next to a guy who really knows the game. And my advantage over Jim is, since I've been doing it so long in television, I'm a little more familiar with television than Jim is. But again, you work with good people, and that's been we haven't worked together very long, and this is our first year of working together. By the time the season's over, we'll have worked together 12 times, and again, you build a relationship, and he's a really nice person, and so he's been fun to work with.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to do a one-on-one with him several years ago. And he treated me with great respect, and it was fun talking to him because he was one of the few guys I guess if you look at the top 20 coaches during over the past 30 years or 40 years or something, he was the one guy I had that was missing. I hadn't done a one-on-one with, and a lot of people said he was not easy to get a one-on-one with. So I was felt very good that he was gracious enough to give me time to do that. But a good guy for sure. Um, so you guys normally, I guess, on a game like yesterday, normally you probably would have driven down the day of the game, right? But I guess you had to be there the night before to get there for a 7 a.m. shoot around.
Well, back in the day, before shoot-arounds were so much in vogue, with a 7 o'clock game, at Clemson, it's possible I'd have driven down the day of the game. But as I have gotten older, driving all the way down the day of the game and being prepared for the game and doing the game, I usually go down the day before and come back the day after just because it's a little easier. That's a
Yeah,
concession that I make to my advancing years.
I understand. Yeah, I know that. I know the feeling. Um, a lot of people don't realize that media pretty much there's no easy way to get to Clemson really, and driving's probably the most sensible and practical way of doing it because otherwise you got to fly into probably Greenville and rent a car and drive the rest of the what an hour, a little over an hour, I guess, to Clemson from Greenville. So you might as well just go ahead and make the drive to begin with.
Well, I don't know how it's done now,
Yeah,
but back in the day, you had to fly from Charlottesville to Charlotte and from Charlotte to Greensboro. So you had to make a connection. And then
yeah,
you had to rent a car and you had to drive from Greenville to Clemson, which is like 40 minutes.
yeah.
And this is a true story. I'm not exaggerating this at all. And this is many, many years ago. But I worked a game for Jefferson Pilot at Virginia. and I had a game at Clemson the next day. And our director also had a game the next day, and he was very anxious that the game at Virginia not go into overtime. And immediately after the game, he rushed out, and he said he had to go catch a flight. And so it was at Virginia. So I hung around a little bit. I talked to some people. I drove home. I had dinner with my wife and kids, and I get in the car and I drove to Clemson. And when I got to Clemson, I pulled into the parking lot at the hotel, and here a car pulls in next to me, and it's our director. The game that he had the next day was at Clemson. And so I decided right then and there I was never flying to Clemson again because, it was just much easier getting in the car and driving. And he went through all of this, and it took him longer to get to Clemson than it took me to get there. That's a true story.
Oh, I definitely believe that. I've seen similar circumstances like that before. People like going to Syracuse and getting caught up in delays and stuff at airports. And Doug Dowdy and I used to drive all over the country like that. One time we drove, I can't remember if it was Boston College or Syracuse, and we drove back, and one of our colleagues flew back, and we got back way before he did because he got caught up in snow delays and all sorts of cancellations, etc. So uh, sometimes driving makes more sense. That's for
Well,
sure.
you can get caught up in delays driving too. There's no,
Well, true.
you can have problems. But again, that's part of what we deal with. That's, part of, there are positive and negatives about anything that you do. And the travel is, most of the time a negative because we're not going there to see the sights. We're going there to work. I
Exactly.
can't tell you how many people over the years have said to me, "Oh, well, I love going there. You should try this restaurant. You should visit this tourist attraction or something." And I said, "I'm there to work.
Exactly.
Basically, the only thing I ever see is from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the arena and back. And if there's something in there and you have some time, that's fine. But generally, you don't have any time. We're there to work."
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how many great restaurant recommendations I've had that I've never had a chance to go there because of that very same thing. Um, Last night's game was, if you're a Hokie fan, you got to be pretty happy about that. That was a really good win for them.
It was. It was a win they needed to have. Uh, it's the funny thing about them. Just a couple of baskets go differently. If Boopy Miller doesn't make a half-court shot, then they win at SMU. If the freshman Corey from Stanford doesn't make a contested three at the end of the game, they win that game. They had a chance to win the game at Wake Forest, and so they lost three pretty close games. Where if that goes the other way, then we're having an entirely different conversation about Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is really good.
Yeah.
And I think losing Lawal early in the season, he missed 6 games, and so that hurt them a little bit. But I think that they are a really good team. They don't have a lot of depth, but they've got guys who can make baskets. They've got guys who can drive the ball, put pressure on you off the dribble. I think in Lawal and Hansberry, they have two very mobile, aggressive, good inside players. As I say, and the Gerdak kid, who played so well against Virginia, is really a good player coming off the bench. So I think they have pieces that fit together well. Obviously, I think they're very well coached, but that was a big win for them last night. And now the question is, can they keep building on it? They don't have an easy schedule, but
Yeah.
it's called opportunity in this day and age. So if they win tough games, then they get more credit.
Yeah. Last night was my first opportunity, I think, or at least the first time I did take the time is to watch Clemson. I think Virginia fans had wondered a lot about, how good is Clemson? A lot of times in the past, not so much the last couple of years, but they were sort of the fake tan of the ACC. They would start off, they'd look good at the beginning, and then it would kind of wear off. But the last 2 or 3 years, they've been pretty good. But they now have a tough down the road schedule.
They do, and they're a very good team.
Yeah.
They're a defensively based team, and a team like Virginia Tech, when they make shots, and they did last night at a high rate, that puts more pressure than usually the Clemson offense can deal with. And Clemson struggled to score last night at times. But I think Clemson's a very good team. They have size. I think they've done a really good job in this day and age through the transfer portal, putting together a team. They don't have one star player. Different guys step forward each night, but they have a very tough schedule down the stretch, and so they've got to play well. Now, they started out very well. They put themselves in really good position, but now they have to maintain that position, and it's going to be a problem because every time you go out, I mean, Boston College and Pitt and people like that down at the bottom of the standings, they're good enough and they play hard enough that they can beat you.
Yeah.
I mean, Virginia goes down and they're lucky to win at Florida State, and Florida State's at the bottom of the league.
Right.
But that's, even though the numbers don't say it, the measuring stick that we use in this day and age doesn't say it. That credits you for starting out really well and punishes you if you start out poorly and finish fast, and rewards you if you start out quickly and fade. But so you have teams like Boston College and Pitt and Florida State and Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, teams who are good enough to beat you if you don't play well. And so that puts added pressure on a team like Clemson or a team like Virginia Tech that's trying to maintain their status, or in Virginia Tech's case, improve it, that you can't afford to lose to those teams, and those teams can beat you.
Yeah, we saw that in Virginia's road trip a couple of weeks ago when they escaped Notre Dame and BC, and within a matter of days of one another, they could have easily dropped either or both of those games. So it's very valid what you just said. Um, the league is much better this year, obviously, than it has been in the past few years, and so it's no easy night. That's a given anymore. Um, it's kind of goofy that Virginia and Clemson don't play. Uh, I think the ACC should be saluted in dropping back from 20 game schedule to an 18 game schedule. I think that's helped uh, give teams an opportunity to play some tougher non-conference games and build up their net rankings or whatever they go by these days. But I think it was kind of goofy to where you don't play everybody at least once. I don't like that. I think you should have to play everybody at least one time.
Well, Jerry, we're both old school. What we would prefer is that you play everybody twice.
Right.
That's that. I mean, because that way that was fun. But it's odd. And the other thing, and no offense to anybody, we're not doing it because of basketball. We're doing it because we're chasing football money.
Right.
But I just think the weirdest thing in the world is that the Atlantic Coast Conference, you have the University of California and Stanford. The last I checked, my geography is not really good, but the last I checked, neither one of those schools are anywhere close to the Atlantic Coast.
No.
But of course, that doesn't make any difference. And that's a challenge that presents a challenge for those schools. The coaches, all the other coaches in the ACC complain about the fact that once every 2 years, they got to go out and play 2 games in California. Well, Stanford and Cal are coming to the East Coast every other week.
Right.
And so I don't know how, number one, their people can go to class. I don't know how they can maintain their physical conditioning. I don't know. I just don't know how they do it. And I have the greatest respect for, Mark Madsen and for Kyle Smith, that they have such a positive attitude about it. But that's hard. And you got to wonder, like, what are we doing?
That's got to be a strain on your body to make those kind of trips all season long.
Well, it's the same thing in the Big Ten. UCLA and Oregon and Washington, they're all coming. They're playing at Rutgers and Maryland, and that's crazy. But again, we're doing it because we're after money, and the money's in football, and this is what you have to do. So as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the whole arrangement, but that's the world we live in, and again, people are having success, and I just have the greatest admiration for the folks from Cal and Stanford that they come east every other week, and somehow they manage to keep their sanity and actually win some games.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. What about this Virginia team, Dan? I know you've seen them a few times. I just hear other coaches keep marveling about um, a couple of things. One, they have so many weapons. One, that they're grown men. I think Florida State's coach Luke Locks mentioned it the other night. He said, I was looking at in preparing for Virginia, and I looked down the list, and it's grown man, grown man, grown man, grown man, grown man. All that and depth and experience and a lot of weapons. Um, pretty Ryan Odom's done a pretty good job putting this roster together.
There isn't any question about that. I will defer to my partner Jim Boeheim, who has seen Virginia with me, and he keeps telling me that he thinks Virginia is pretty good now and that they're going to be really good by the end of the season, because his opinion, and I agree with him, is that Virginia hasn't played their best basketball yet.
Yeah.
Because Virginia has a lot of guys who supposedly are able to shoot threes. And you look at their 3-point shooting percentage in ACC play, and you think, well, maybe they shouldn't shoot quite so many threes.
Yeah.
That's their philosophy. But it's one of those things that if they can ever have players, and of course it hurt them having the white kid, Jakari White, get hurt because he was such a factor coming off the bench and his ability to make threes. But I think this is a Virginia team that they have size. They have people who have experience playing basketball. They're getting experience playing together. I think that they have the chance. I agree with Jim Boeheim. They're pretty good right now, and they have a chance to be very, very good. But I would also add the cautionary note that this is a team, you get into the NCAA tournament, and you're playing against another good team, and your 3-point shots aren't falling, then you have to find other ways to win. And in the couple of games that Virginia has lost, they have shot less than 30% from beyond the 3-point arc. And then I have won some games where they've shot under 30%. But in the games that they lose, the wheels have come off in some other area. Against both Butler and Virginia Tech, they were badly outscored from the free throw line. And against North Carolina, they threw the ball to North Carolina as many times as they threw it to their own guys.
Yeah.
So, North Carolina scored a lot of points off turnovers. So if Virginia can survive those kind of things if they're making threes, but if they're not making threes, then they have to be at the top of their game in other areas. And they have to make plays. And they made plays against Notre Dame. They made plays, against Boston College. They made plays against Florida State, the kind of games you're talking about where their teams, they should beat these teams, but they made plays. And obviously, they played well against NC State. They've beaten SMU. So this is a very good team. And as I say, I agree with Jim Boeheim. I think they're a good team now, and I think they're getting better.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see their non-conference game with Ohio State on Valentine's Day this week out in Nashville. It's kind of a strange timing for that, but I guess it was probably made for TV event, right?
Well, I don't know about that. Duke always was a team that they tried to play a non-conference game against a quality opponent during the conference season, and I think that's a pretty good idea. And what you're saying is going to the 18-game schedule instead of the 20-game schedule. It gives you the opportunity to do something like that, and I'm glad to see Virginia take the opportunity to play another quality team.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I remember back in the days when Virginia was always highly ranked in the nation, they would seek out a lot of these non-conference games. Some of them as late as Valentine's Day, maybe, but
well, that was back in the day when we didn't have 37 teams in the league.
Exactly, exactly.
If you have 8 teams in the league, if you have 9 teams in the league, let's say that, because we had 9 teams for many years after Florida State joined, but you have 9 teams in the league and you play everybody twice in a round robin, that's 16 games. And now, teams play what? You advance to the NCAA tournament, play 42, 43 games. So you got to play somebody else.
Yeah, now we have double 9 teams, 18 teams in the league, so it's insane. Um, a lot of people have brought up expansion of the NCAA tournament. Where do you stand on that? Do you like to keep it where it is, or would you like to see it expand?
It doesn't really make any difference to me. The problem I have with the whole expansion argument is the support, the evidence that they give that the tournament ought to be expanded. Uh, I will tell you that I'm old school. I liked 64.
Hmm.
Now, I think that having the first four, having the teams go to Dayton, the way that has been constructed, the way the NCAA has handled that whole thing, I think that has been positive. So I'm not upset that it's the field of 68 now. That's perfectly all right with me. But to make the argument that okay, now wait a minute, since the time we expanded the field to 68, there have been so many more teams added to the Division One, eligible for the NCAA tournament. Uh, that's a very specious claim to me because every single one of those teams that have been added to a league that is a one bid league. And
Right.
so it makes it harder for the teams from the one bid leagues to get the one bid because they're playing against more teams in their own league, and they have a harder time in their own tournament. But if you're going to make the argument to me that, wait a minute, it's a great thing, it's a great opportunity for players to participate in the NCAA tournament, then that's good. But don't tell me if you expand the NCAA tournament that you're going to add, Indiana State was the poster child a couple years ago when they played so very well in their conference and then just happened to lose in the conference championship game and didn't get into the NCAA tournament. Don't tell me that you're going to add 3 or 4 teams like that because you're not. What you're going to add is you're going to add the teams, the mediocre teams from the power conferences. They're the ones who are going to get in. And the more teams like that you add, the more I think you risk the flavor of the NCAA tournament, which is the upsets and these Cinderellas, and that may not mean anything to like serious basketball fans, but part of the popularity of the NCAA tournament is its appeal to the general public. And I think you have to be careful that goose lays some golden eggs, and you got to be careful about that.
Yeah, there's already some talk out of last year's tournament that because of the NIL, that we might not see as many Cinderellas in the future because so many of the mid majors have their talent robbed by the power conferences. They gobble up all the talent and less likely of those Cinderellas emerging anymore.
Well, that certainly was the case last year, but it's funny, Jerry, and you have experienced this the same as I do. You have these Cinderellas and you have upsets in the first and second round, and then everybody starts to complain, well, wait a minute, we don't want to see Kansas play Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah.
We want to see Kansas play Purdue.
Right.
So you can't have it both ways. If you're going to have upsets and Cinderellas, then you're going to get to the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, and you might have some mismatch kind of games. And, the TV people, they want to see, Duke play Connecticut. And I don't say that in a negative way because,
Right.
I work for those people and, I want to have great ratings too, but that's what draws the ratings. A national championship game between Connecticut and, Fairleigh Dickinson isn't going to do anything.
Right.
But again, it's just if it's an exciting event, people love to participate in it. So if you're going to expand it for that reason, then I can live with that. But don't tell me you're doing it because there's so many more teams that it's unfair.
Yeah.
That's not true. There are not none of the teams in the power leagues are teams who joined Division One since the last time we expanded the NCAA tournament. So
Yeah.
none.
Yeah, that theory doesn't hold water.
But you'll hear that advocated all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hear it all the time. Where will fans see you this weekend?
Well, I'm going to go on up to Boston tomorrow. I leave tomorrow morning. I've got a noon game in Boston. I got Cal in Boston. So Cal had an overtime game against Syracuse, and now they got to go to Boston on their swing. And Stanford, that won at Boston College last night, they're headed to they're headed to Syracuse. So, that's what we're talking about. Those schools, good luck with that.
Exactly. All right. Well, listen, Dan, it's been a pleasure talking about your career and getting your insight on college basketball. We appreciate you, man, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. We uh, cherish your relationship.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Jerry. I really enjoyed it.
All right, brother. We'll see you down the road.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.